What's up, guys? Hope everyone is doing well. In this video I'm going to be going over quite a many number of Bitcoin charts, but go ahead and get it started. First thing on this 4-hour chart, which I went over in the last video on the community tab. Within the last week I pointed out how on the 4-hour, as we can see here, Bitcoin had this brief, well now has been a brief drawdown outside of this bull flag channel, and it was meeting 800 EMA. So hopefully that support could have been found there, and it has so far. We've seen a V-shaped recovery, which was what I was mentioning. In best case scenario, this would just be a quick fake out, draw down in the channel, and we see a quick recovery back up into the channel. So far, we can see this short-term resistance going back to April 8th. Bitcoin has closed 2 4-hour candles above it so far, so that's good, although we can clearly see that Bitcoin is showing some sort of resistance at this 200 estimated moving average, the white EMA, which has been pretty integral in the structure of this sideways, rough sideways, slightly downside action of this bull flag. At least I still think it is a bull flag. Finding support here, and then it flipped resistance. So we need to break that. Bitcoin really needs to break that, sitting at approximately 64,000, almost 64.1K. And then we also have this median, again, sits at around 65, 65.1, and then, as I was mentioning as well, 66.5 to 66.7, which is going to be, if there were to, if we look at this range right here is sideways, and then we see this again as like a fake out. The median of the sideways range is around 66.5 to 66.7, so that's going to be very important once more to break. And then after that, the downward sloping, the negative resistance so far sits at 70, well, around approximately 70.5K, so that's going to be also, that will be the last thing for this bull flag. Once Bitcoin breaks above that, may or may not come down and retest it all. I mean, it could very well just blow straight through and without retesting. This is retesting this resistance and flipping it into support. Moving into this daily chart, again, we see the dailies breaking back into just 4 hours, the bull flag channel, although we can see that similar to how the 4 hours running into the 200 EMA finding resistance, we see the daily running into the what was the support of this ascending broadening channel I've been going over for quite some time. So there also could be some resistance found here, and maybe it will go lower again. I still don't think that Bitcoin will go lower than this 41%. 20 to 40% has always been healthy bull market corrections, and make some room down to 41% for some wicks, anything of that nature. Just approximately 43,000, give or take. Well, more so, give around $500, take around like 200 or 300, just to be, I suppose, more safe. There's also, just in terms of the price movement, large reason to find support back here with respect to this sideways action as well, along with seeing potential resistance at this what was support for this ascending broadening channel. It's also lining up with, we see the 50 EMA band here as well. So plenty of reason to find resistance, but there's also, I believe, plenty of reasons for Bitcoin to continue to go higher here, and break out of this bull flag and continue to make higher highs. Look down here at the daily MACD, we can see we're getting some minor bullish divergence. See the negative support up here for the price, positive for the MACD. It's also on the stock RSI as well. RVI and the RSI don't show it, but the RSI is, we are currently, when Bitcoin wicked down to around 56.5, RSI was lower, just a tad bit lower, around difference of 32 to 28, it's about 4 points than when Bitcoin was at 38.7. So that's a hidden bullish divergence, good to see as well. Also, the 200 EMA sits at around 52,000 as well, so again, we could totally continue to come down to there. And if, as I said in a community update, if Bitcoin does come down to 50 to 53K, then I would be inclined to see this bull flag as invalidated. Not that Bitcoin is not going to go up anymore, but just that the bull flag price target would be less likely, if not likely at all, to play out. But only time will tell what happens when it comes to that scenario, if Bitcoin is going to go lower or if it's going to continue to push towards the upside here. So this daily chart, we can see we are finding support currently along these 3 points of what were resistance: 6th of December, 10th of January, around the 16th, 17th of February. And then during the halfway into February, Bitcoin entered this range, traded right in the middle of it, hitting the top, coming down to the bottom, and then moving back up. And then we've been forming what I still think this is going to play out like a bull flag. It's what I lean to currently. We found support here so far. And also, if we take a look down here, I think this is RSI with Bollinger Bands, we can again see that the price is more, again, oversold now than it was when Bitcoin was lower, actually lower in price. We're also seeing the RSI here flip above the, see the blue line flip above the pink and the white. So best case scenario, we will continue, Bitcoin will continue to come up, exit these Bollinger Bands, exit this median at around 53, and the price will continue to push higher, breaking those price targets or price ranges I mentioned on the prior charts. Taking a look here at this 3-day chart with the parabolic curve showing the 6 stage, these pivot points that have been historically shown in Bitcoin going all the way back to around 2012, 2013, as I showed it in the last video. You can see right now, so far it's playing out fairly nicely to the fractal pattern that I put on here in terms of coming down a little bit lower, meeting this parabolic curve, finding support once here, finding support once more here as we have each and every single time so far, going back down to 15.4K. And again, I just want to mention on here, we can see, this being the 3-day chart, the importance of the 50 EMA band. We can see Bitcoin is coming up here, found support along the 50 EMA itself. See the same thing again right here. And then Bitcoin was revisiting approximately 25K for the second time during this sideways action. We can see Bitcoin did go a little bit lower, but ultimately I would say the 50 EMA band acted as at least rough support. We can see Bitcoin got close to it right here, and Bitcoin is already currently wicked into this as well. And also the bottom of this 50 EMA band sits at 52,000. So again, I think just further reason to think that Bitcoin won't go any too substantial lower than 50K, maybe see some wicks down to around 49, 48K, but I wouldn't think anything lower than that, according to all the evidences. Look here at this 4-day chart. This is actually, so as I showed earlier, the 4-hour bull flag, we see this fake out of this drawdown, this deviation from the actual channel. We see the same thing on the daily. But when we look here at the 4-day, we can see right here that this never actually happened. And so far, given this is a higher time frame, this is going to be more viable than those lower time frame bull flags that I've shown. So really, the way that I'm looking at it now is Bitcoin, and for all intents and purposes, has not actually seen a deviation from the bull flag, given this 4-day bull flag, which I would say also just looks even more like a bull flag than the daily and the 4-hour versions. We're finding support again. We see this massive wick, small body. You could look at that as a hammer candle, which typically act as bullish reversals. Now there's a better one I'm going to show on the weekly when it comes to this candlestick pattern. But also as well, we're continuing to see support. Or so far we have found support. Again, within this range that I mentioned in one of the last videos being very important for this sideways action during the last bull market. So I do think, again, personally, I do see more evidence for the fact that Bitcoin is finding support within a bull flag, and it is more likely than not to continue to go towards the upside here, but it could totally go down even lower, as I have been mentioning. There's also if you look at the vector control zones, really no reason to go down to this one right here, or these two. They're insanely small, and if Bitcoin, I said, no part of me, other than the fact that I believe anything is possible, anything can happen, but really, reasonably and logically, no part of me could entertain Bitcoin coming down to this vector control zone around 27 to 31.5K. So really, all that's left, what is most viable, is down to around approximately 50K, 50,000, as I've been mentioning. Now, I've added this Fibonacci channel with respect to each of these pivot points. So the wick low, November 2022, down to, or up to the wick low of October 12th, and then also the candle close right here for the local top in April last year at around 30,000. We can see the importance of going back here as well. There's some support found here. The Bitcoin finally entered this channel that it's been in since end of August of 2022, and it exited this channel February 22nd of this year. And so far we have come down, we've wicked down to the top of this ascending channel. After, whenever Bitcoin broke, as you can see, broke this channel, it met the 1.618 up here as well, just slightly breaking the all-time highs again. I think it's personally pretty clear that Bitcoin has broke the all-time highs here. Now, people will mention how due to inflation and a bunch of economic factors that really Bitcoin needs to get to, I think it was 89,000. Once you factor in the inflation and other economic factors, really the all-time high is 89,000. And once Bitcoin breaks that, then that could be seen as like the final nail in the coffin for a bearish scenario to actually end up playing out. But regardless of that, we can clearly see, just according to the chart, not factoring in that data, Bitcoin has broke the all-time highs. It looks as if it's coming down in a bullish flag to retest these all-time highs. It's double top, and also retest this channel that it's been in for quite some time as well, finding support along it. And also, even if Bitcoin were to come down around 50K, this lines up with the 786 to the 618 range as well. So again, further reason to think that that would be a fantastic place to bottom out. It's also where Bitcoin found support towards the end of January earlier this year as well. The price target for the bull flag, assuming that it continues to play out, lines up somewhere. Now, depending upon which time frame you take it, it'll be a little bit different. It's typically sometimes higher on the lower time frames, but the higher time frame is 4-day. Which again, like I said, I think it's the best version of the bull flag. It sits at around approximately 110,000. As I've been saying, 90 to 100, approximately 130K would be a more broad range I think Bitcoin would head into. Like for example, I mean, assuming Bitcoin continues to go towards the upside here, we could see something along these lines where Bitcoin will come up to around like 78, 80K, make a short pit stop there to continue to climb up towards 90K, stop here for a little bit, and then finally make that last lunge up to around 110K, or maybe even up to as high as 130K, 120 to 130K. If it plays out similar to the flagpole of this bull flag, then we could see it end, depending upon when it breaks, sometime around last week, last week of June, first week of July. We look here at just another 4-day chart. We also see reason right here, support going all the way to mid-October last year. We have right here, last week of January earlier this year. And then currently the candles have not come down to touch this trend yet, but you can clearly see it's coming into contact with this major wick towards the downside here. This is also another, you could look at this again right here as a 30th of April. Right here is a hammer like bullish candlestick, but this one again is still red. It's not the best one that I've seen so far. And then another 4-day chart we can see here. What I want to point out is the estimated moving averages. So the green and the red, the 5 EMA and the 13 EMA. Zooming in here very closely, getting rid of the candlesticks, we can see that the 5 EMA has crossed below the 13 EMA. You can see that happened right as we saw the lowest candle close and lowest wick low. We go all the way back to comparable times when it happened. It did happen right here as well. We can see the 5 going below 13 right here and right here as it was starting to dump into the actual low. Although in these two cases, I don't think it's as comparable to the one right here. I think one that is very comparable would be going all the way back to the prior bull market. Right here we can see as it was transitioning from 5th to the 9th of September 2020, we see the 5 EMA cross below 13 EMA. This is as Bitcoin has already set the low, it is bottoming out and it continues to go back towards the upside. We go to the other comparable one. It's going to be in cycle 2, phase 2 of cycle 2, 2014 to 2017. You can see right here, get rid of the candles once more. We see this cross and it's happening as Bitcoin is bottoming out. Candle close low, wick low as well. This is also very similar to what we see recently as well. We see you could have looked at this as a bull flag with this flagpole right here and this kind of this downside channel that it's in, and then it breaks towards the upside here. Although this second leg up right here was not as large as this first one, which could point to maybe this next leg up we're about to see for Bitcoin is also not going to be as much as the flagpole of the current flag run. But I do think this is one that's most similar to where we are currently. We go to last week of March of 2017, see a very similar thing happen as well. We see this crossover of the moving averages, or estimated moving averages, as Bitcoin is setting its low. You look right here. This one's also not as comparable, but it's more like the sideways range of 25 to 30K that I was showing not too long ago during our current bull market. But we see this cross happen here as well around the 31st July 2016. This is when Bitcoin set the wick low, but then over the next like 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, really about another month, about another month, Bitcoin just continued to bleed a little bit. It didn't set any new lows given this wick low was so drastic, but it did close the candles low. But overall, as we can see again right here, we see something similar as it crosses over right here around the last week of January 2016. It was just about a week or two out, and the lows were set. Bitcoin continued to go towards the upside. We go to the final two. We again see a cross right here in this area around last week of October 2012, as Bitcoin is setting its wick low. Then the next candle did close lower, but the lows had been set, basically lined up when Bitcoin was bottoming out. And then the final one right here, again, we see this cross about right on the 14th February 2012, as Bitcoin again once more is setting the wick low, close a little bit lower, but overall again we see most of these, the majority of these crosses, where we see the 5 EMA go below the 13 EMA, going all the way back to basically the beginning of Bitcoin. Actually, I didn't even notice this one, but there's one right here as well, going all the way back to the very first cycle of Bitcoin. This is going to be, this one happened first week of April, first 4 days of April 2011. We can see right here, see this crossover as Bitcoin sets the candle close low and wick low. So the vast majority of these, going all the way back to, again, 2011, has every single time, not every single time, but as I said, the vast majority of the time we see this happen as we're clearly in a bull market, which I think it's pretty clear we are in a bull market, or Bitcoin is in a bull market at this point. Every time this has happened, this is lined up with either the low has already been set in, or, at most 2 to 4 weeks is left for Bitcoin to just trickle down a tad bit more, which again, like I said, could totally line up with coming down to approximately 50K, and just kind of fulfilling this area out right here a little bit more. Within this estimated 50 EMA band, we could perhaps see something a little bit similar to what happened back here from roughly really end of August, first half of September. We could see something like this, where we trickle down just a little bit more, around 50K, and then Bitcoin actually picks up from here to continue to go higher. Again, we have this weekly chart here, just to further point out these vector control zones for volume control. Again, there's nothing, if we break through this vector control zone right here, there's nothing until 27.2K to 30,000. Just like once more, just to reiterate, I do not logically and reasonably think there's any good reason for Bitcoin to come down that low. If Bitcoin were to do that, this would be approximately 60% drawdown. This has never happened in a Bitcoin bull market. Not to say that things can't change. Clearly things do change, and the bull markets are different as Bitcoin progresses, such as not being as bullish, and also just taking longer to play out as well when in comparison to their prior iteration in terms of the phase cyclical movement. Also, again, the halving happened around the I think it was the 20th of April, sometime 20th, 21st, 22nd. The halving happened. And typically, every time these do happen, we do see some doesn't immediately blast off. For example, back here in 2016, we see this drawdown, which I say this is roughly similar to what we've seen currently. The only really exception is this one right here, where basically Bitcoin just went fully parabolic. But that was very early on in its maturity, so it's gonna have more strength behind its price movement towards the upside. And then when it comes to this hammer candlestick pattern that I was pointing out on the weekly, well, I was pointing it on the 4-day and other charts on lower time frames. But the best one, and what's most compelling given this is the weekly chart, is this one. Each of these areas pointing to, we can see this diagram shows small body with wicks that are bigger than the body and little to no upper shadow or upper wick. We can see a model of this right here where we see it at the bottom. It moves towards the upside. Now, best case scenario, you want to see these green. The other ones I mentioned were red, so they're bearish. Both of these have been green candles right here last week of January. Set the low, wicking down to approximately 38.6K. Bitcoin then moved up to the local high of approximately 74,000, 73.6. We're seeing the same thing here basically with an even more drastic wick towards the downside. We can also see this one back here as one, although the downside wick was bigger than the body, so technically wick classifies one. There's just a very small wick towards the upside, but we can see, and typically with these candlesticks, a lot of the times whenever you see, now these are the traditional candlesticks, typically I use the Heiken Ashi candles. With Heiken Ashi candles, whenever you see these bodies start to thin out, it typically, in a lot of cases, will signify momentum is dying down towards the upside or the downside, and the trend is about to switch. For example, we see it right here. Momentum's dying off. We had this one candle that moved a lot more, had more volume towards the upside, but ultimately price came down. We see as we're getting towards these lows right here, the bodies, these two right here, 15th of May, we get the 15th of May, and we get the 12th of June. Bodies are thinning out towards the lows. We see it right here with these 3 consecutive candles at the lows until Bitcoin, leading into Bitcoin switching and moving up into this uptrend we've been in since about beginning mid-September of last year. We look here at this monthly, we can see as we've just started this new month of May, we also see a candle that has an insanely small body and small wicks towards the upside and the downside, which are obviously bigger than the body itself. Just to point out these types of candles, we can see this happened back here, right as the bull market, or at least ultimately the bull market began back here for 2019, but we did set this intermediate top, and then we had this major correction that led into the pandemic, which worsened this crash. If I were to speculate and conjecture, if the pandemic had never happened, I think it would have basically looked the same as this, but this wick would not have been as drastic. It would have likely just came down to where this channel is right here. So really, I think that this wick basically represents how the pandemic factored into just worsening what Bitcoin is already supposed to do, because those of you familiar with my phase cycle theory, this was inevitable to happen. This is phase 1, the W, the double bottom that's set leading into the bull market of phase 1 of Bitcoin's cycle. We can also go back to the beginning of September 2020. Not as drastic as our current candle, but you see this small body wicks towards the upside and the downside, and then things continue to move towards the upside. Now, that being said, this could represent that we're about to move lower down to the downside here, although the 786 is where approximately 50K sits. So if Bitcoin were to meet 50K, I would say that it wouldn't take any longer than leading into maybe the first half of July for Bitcoin to, at longest, this is at longest, meet 50K. It could totally happen very quickly within a week or two, maybe even less. Maybe we just see a massive drawdown with drastic wicks, and we see a V-shaped recovery like I was showing earlier, as Bitcoin breaking back into the bull flag channel in the 4-hour. But we can see the importance of the 786. It was resistance right here, and once Bitcoin broke recently on the monthly, it's the first time we started to see our high volume vector candles printed, which are really giving us future indication, because this is where I believe the next Bitcoin bear market is going to bottom out at. We can see that it happened right here. We see as Bitcoin's breaking the all-time highs, we see these 2 high volume vector candles printed, and they recovered almost 100% of it. The candles did, leading into the most recent bear market. And we can see going back to phase right here, we see phase 2, cycle 2, leading into approximately 20K. Bull market ensued. You can see each of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these 6 high volume vector candles. Bitcoin recovered 3 of them, so that's at least 50%, given that being the rule of thumb. In most cases, Bitcoin will recover at least, or is necessarily needs to recover at least 50% of these vector candles, but it's not always going to happen. It's not always going to reach 50%, especially in bull markets when there's just a lot of velocity behind the movement of price towards the upside. But that was all that I wanted to go over in this video. So as always, hopefully enjoyed. None of this is meant to be financial advice, but all of that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Now won't I see you forever, start to